It's Christmas morning, and I'm waiting to unwrap my gifts. Hopefully, when I do, I see these three things from my HBCU Christmas wish list. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. I appreciate you making this your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Yeah, brought it down strong today. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Christmas. Yes, I know, corny as that could be. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever it is that you celebrate, right? Today's episode is a Christmas wish list. I decided to be real thematic. I have on my Christmas sweater that I wear every 25th. And I have three things in particular. One is basketball related. One is very personal as far as my alma mater. But the first one I think is for all HBCUs, though you may not be able to realize it just yet. I appreciate you for spending Christmas morning, Christmas day, Christmas afternoon, or maybe you're waking up on the 26th and you said, you know what, I want to check this out. Either way, I appreciate you for taking time in your holiday season to listen to me. I'm going to go ahead and get these things in here quick in a hurry because I got a family to tend to, my doggone self. Davius Richard being drafted is something that I'm looking forward to unwrapping. Every single one of my gifts is on layaway, right? It's almost like a certificate. I'll get it later, fingers crossed. But Davius Richard being drafted will be a big deal not only for him, it'd be the biggest deal for him, of course, but for us as HBCU supporters, this is something that we should completely be rooting for. I understand that we've had conversations about the lack of HBCU representation in the NFL draft. Those conversations have kind of expanded into lack of FCS representation within the draft. But I've seen some FCS quarterbacks. I have. What we don't see is HBCU quarterbacks being drafted. As a matter of fact, we haven't seen it since Tavares Jackson. That was a long time ago. So I'm looking for Davius Richard to break that drought. It ain't a streak because there's nothing positive about it. But I'm looking for Richard to break that drought. And he's had some really high moments. He's had games against FCS competition in which he's played very well, right? Outside of the MEAC. He's rose to the occasion in multiple big-time games. We've seen what he did in the Celebration Bowl, and hopefully that is weighed higher than what happened in an injured FCS playoff game. But I've seen Richard rise to the occasion on enough times for me to say, all right, this should be studied. This should be something that is valued by scouts. One thing I've noticed this will be going into my third draft cycle, right? So 2022, 23, and now 24. Yeah. So this will be going into my third draft cycle and kind of I've done 2 complete seasons. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of times when players go beyond the draft, the intrigue in them tends to leave. To each his own, right? I'm not here to be on my high horse or to tell you what you should or should not care about. But I notice how intrigue departs once they're out of your college, once they're out of the draft system. I think that if he were to be drafted as a quarterback, that would break that mold. You would have a QB, which is the most important player on the field at all times, can make or break you. And I'm not saying that he's going to get drafted and go on to be a day one starter who is going to be a playoff. I'm not saying all of those things. More likely than not, he'll likely have to develop in the league as a late round draft pick. That's just the route that people who are drafted in that place go, right? Even if you want to look at Brock Purdy, Trey Lance had to get hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo had to get hurt just for Brock Purdy to get his chance. He was a third-string quarterback who happened to luck into an opportunity and then make the best of it. So I'm not trying to stack a whole lot of expectations on top of Davius Richard. I'm just here to say that if a quarterback is drafted, that's worth about probably about two players from another position, because we know how valuable that is. That changes conversations. And a lot of times quarterbacks is a mental thing. And I know that, we have more black quarterbacks in the NFL now, but I do believe there's still a bit of a stigma around their mental processing. So you look at an HBCU quarterback, you're definitely going to get that stigma. And that's the unfair one. You also have the competition level that people of all FCS class also get. Like, these are real things. For Davius Richard to be able to be drafted, no matter when it is, 5th, 6th, 7th round, whatever, that's a big deal that I think people will track. People will want to know what's going on with him. When Akil Glass fell out, I think it was Tampa Bay, people were just like, whatever. It happened because he wasn't drafted. People didn't have as much eyes on him. So I'm really hoping that people get to watch what happens with Davius Richard and they decide to make it their mission to track it. And I think a big part of that is him getting drafted. And also, it'd be kind of nice to have an HBCU quarterback drafted for once since Tavares Jackson. I'm just saying. So that's the first thing that I'm wishing for. And that helps HBCUs as a collective because it's the brand of an HBCU quarterback being drafted. The way we should celebrate it will be monumental, and it'll be bigger than North Carolina Central. It'll be bigger than the MEAC. It'd be all HBCUs who I think would take a lot of pride in finally seeing a quarterback from our institutions, right, as a group from our institutions, finally be drafted. Now, as we move forward, this one is personal for me. Now we're going to go to Texas Southern, because my wish for my alma mater is that we find a coach, and most importantly, we find some success. And we'll look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, and especially on Christmas Day. Now, once I finish, you can go to the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 podcast stream, and we still rolling no matter what time it is. Maybe you just opened your gift. Maybe you just poured yourself a little bit of eggnog. Maybe you didn't just let the kids ride around on their little toy bike over in the garage. I don't know, but you can have Locked On Sports Today as the theme music or the kind of the soundtrack to the rest of your Christmas day. Now, that being said, my Texas Southern Tigers, you have to understand who I am. I'm a football guy through and through. And I understand that we're creeping into basketball season. I understand that, for most people, they probably have dove into basketball season now. I'm still football minded, but I'm easing into it. But I'm not quite there enough because my school has not found a new football head coach. I need that. We'll actually look at that on Wednesday's episode, but I need that ASAP. This is not something that I can wait until 2024 with. This is not something that's going to be on layaway. I would like a coach immediately. And I know we have a lot of conversations around who that coach will be, but frankly, I don't really care because I'm not a fan of TSU based on who the coach was. If that was the case, I probably wouldn't have been a fan of TSU for a couple of years. Now, granted, I stuck it out. I was able to learn who Clarence McKinney was, kind of, hear more about him, talk to him a little bit more. And I realized, I was a little bit harsh at first. But if you know something about me, I'm stubborn as they come. I am. So when I felt a certain kind of way about McKinney in 2020, and then I graduated, I could have easily just said, forget them and forget them, right? I could have easily did that, but I didn't. And I stuck it through. So, anywho, I'm looking for a coach and I'm looking for success because who the coach is irrelevant. I want Fred McNair. If it's not Fred McNair, I'm not going to turn my back on the program, but they better get some success. And I think that the way things are going right now, the amount of success that the coach gets, it's probably going to have to be immediate, especially if it's Fred McNair. But I'll leave that for probably Wednesday's episode. The reason I'm looking for success, and I stress that, is because it's been foreign to me. The fanfare, it's cute. I like it, but I've seen it before. And I hate to call back to it. The most fanfare I've ever seen around Texas Southern, and let's just say starting in 2016, that's when I got there. The most fanfare I ever seen around Texas Southern was in 2019 when they had the Sauce U. That was the acronym that they were running with TSU instead of Texas Southern, right? The Sauce University was a recruiting ploy. They didn't win a stinking game that year. So I need success. Fanfare is not enough for me any longer. I need success today, tomorrow, next week, next year, and all the way throughout for a mighty long time to make up for what I've had to watch over the last half decade. Right? But this is Christmas. Let me stop being a Scrooge, right? We're not looking at the ghost of Christmas past. Matter of fact, I don't even want to see the ghost of Christmas present. When it comes to Texas Southern and the football team, I'm trying to look at the ghost of Christmas future and pray that mine looks better than Scrooge's did, because I'm looking at some of the outcomes from the past couple of years and there's no consistency. I need the consistency, and I need the consistency to be positive going forward. Let's combine my jobs, right? In the words of J. Cole, why would I choose between this one and that one when I know that I could have both? I'm looking at an article that I wrote Friday, Saturday, one of the two. And it was about Dennis Allen, the Saints head football coach. And I'll connect this in a second. It spoke about how I don't believe that Dennis Allen has a statement win because it's never been followed up by anything. Everybody seems to have a statement win of their era, right? To market, unless you're just completely trash. But the problem is the Saints have had impressive victories. Had an impressive victory over the Giants with the way they played. I know the Giants aren't a big time competitor. Same with the Patriots early this year, but it's the way you played against these teams. Shutting out a team 34-0, no matter how bad they played, is still impressive. Or you can go to the Raiders from 2021 or 2022, rather, excuse me. And you had a shutout from them 24-0. But every single impressive game that I've noted was followed by disappointment. It was just followed by a bad loss. And that's kind of how I feel with TSU. I'll take the last 3 years. So 2021, 2022, and 2023. In 21 and 22, they knocked off Southern both years, and it was a big deal, right? The first time in Arlington, huge deal. I remember this, right? So you beat Southern in 2021. Then you proceed to lose to Grambling and Alcorn the next 2 weeks in a row. So I can't even feel good. When they beat Southern, trust me, that was a meaningful victory. I remember it because it was so shocking. I didn't see it coming. No one saw it coming. It just happened, right? Then you go to 2022 and you shut out Southern. You shut out the Southern Jaguars. And that was huge. It was the beginning of the season. It just felt like, oh, now we talking. Now TSU might be cooking with something. And that was the best season that they had in a long time. But you look at the game following, you lose to UTSA. I'll move that away because you're supposed to lose that game. Blame that on scheduling. But then you go to Alabama State and you lose to the Hornets. Every statement victory has to be put in quotes, right? Every statement victory was followed by a loss. So it's hard to say you had a statement victory. I don't want to live that life. You look at Alcorn. They blew Alcorn out. They are the reason that Alcorn is not in the SWAC championship game in 2023. And things were feeling good. So good that I was saying, you know what? Maybe Clarence McKinney does get another year. Maybe. And then he comes out, the school. I don't want to put that all on him. The school comes out and they get beat by UAPB. After having a big-time halftime lead, you choke that away. Every statement victory was followed by a disappointment loss. Every impressive victory was followed by a disappointing loss. And that's the reason that there were no statement victories over the last 3 years. It's simple. With the Saints, every impressive victory was followed by a disappointing loss. For TSU over the last 3 years, every impressive victory was followed by a disappointing loss. So for that reason, there are no statement victories. I need prolonged success. I don't need a big-time victory in week 3 and then get beaten week 4 and 5. I need a big-time victory in week 3, followed up with a win there, and then come back with another big-time victory in week 7. That's what I need in 2024. I need my coach ASAP. I need my success in the upcoming season. Now, as we move forward, speaking about success, I appreciate y'all for rocking with me on this Christmas day. I'm going to try to see if I can get another Christmas metaphor in. I don't know what I'll do though, so it'll be on the fly if I do it. I don't have this planned out, but we'll look at that. We'll look at HBCU upsets in the NCAA tournament and why I need that in 2024 as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We're going over our HBCU Christmas wish list. So all I want for Christmas is you and these 3 things. So just 4 things. But I need an HBCU upset in the NCAA tournament. Right? So what's some Christmas, right? I got you. An HBCU upset in the 2024 NCAA tournament, male or female, makes no difference to me. An HBCU upset in the NCAA tournament in 2024 will make my heart grow 3 sizes bigger. My girl loves the Grinch, so Dubs, this one's for you. But in all seriousness, and out of the way of that, we finally get into basketball because we are creeping into basketball season, and I'm probably slower than others because I love football so much. I want to linger on the Celebration Bowl for as long as possible. People want to linger on recruiting. I'll do it too if it means I get to stick with basketball. Like, that's just how I feel about it. I just love this. Or if I get to stick with football, I love this sport, right? But when I look at things for all HBCUs, yet again, I start with all HBCUs, I finish with all HBCUs. It'd be refreshing to see an HBCU register an upset because we haven't seen that in over a decade. 2012 was the last time we've seen an HBCU from the MEAC, SWAC, CAA now, I guess CAA, Big South, OVC, right? So Tennessee State, Hampton, North Carolina, A&T, everybody in the SWAC of MEAC. We haven't seen them pull off an upset on the men's side since Norfolk did it in 2012. And, I think that would elevate things. That would make people pay attention. And it doesn't have to be a Cinderella team, but just a simple upset because, let's be honest, more likely than not, and I think Norfolk has a solid out-of-conference record right now. I could be wrong. Most, if not, or both, most likely both, if not at least one, right? HBCU will be a 16 seed, maybe 15. I doubt we'll see a 14. A 1 or 2 seed falling in the first round of the NCAA tournament would be monumental. And the team that upsets that first or second round team, or that first or second seeded team in the first round, they will get a lot of coverage, a lot of fanfare. And I know it's not going to spread to all HBCUs. It's going to spread to whoever that is, right? So let's say it's Texas Southern, right? Let's say it's Norfolk, 2 teams that are typically pretty good on the men's side, and I'll look at them. Or let's say it's UAPB's women's team, who's played really well as of recent, right? Let's rock with them, right? Let's say UAP women's basketball knocks off a number 2 seed, because they have two bigger schools that they've already defeated this year. So maybe they're able to get a 15 seed if they go in and they dominate the SWAC. So let's say they knock off a 2 seed. Man, that would change so much. That would change so much for that program, the amount of attention that they would get. The amount of attention that came to Jackson State for nearly defeating LSU 2 years ago. I saw a little bit of attention for, I think it was Norfolk State women's basketball last year because Dawn Staley gave them the nod of how impressive they were. All of these things go in. But we saying little victories. We're saying moral victories. I'm saying a W. I'm saying moving to the second round, something we ain't seen in a long time. I've seen 6 Final Four victories in the last decade. First 4 victories in the last decade, which is basically a play-in. I don't even really count that as part of the tournament. I'm thankful for it because it gives the schools amount of money for just making it, for winning that game. You get it. Let me see how this was told to me by Isaac. Because this was like a year and a half, 2 years ago that we had this conversation on the program. But basically, you get a certain check as a school for winning in the NCAA tournament each game. You get that check for winning in the first 4 as well. So that's a check. So, if you just make it as a 16 seed and then you lose to the 1 seed, you don't get that check. But if you make it as a play-in, win the play-in, you do get that check. And that check goes over for I think 5 years or something like that. So I am thankful for that, but I would like to see an upset. I would like to see a 16 seed knock off a 1 seed from an HBCU, of course. I would like that to be the 16 seed, or 15 seed knocking off a 2 seed. I don't think it's likely we see another 14. That'll be very difficult and unlikely. Maybe we do. Either way, let them knock off a 3. They're not going to get any higher than 14. Just strength of conference isn't going to let it happen. But that's my Christmas wish list. I want Davius Richard to be drafted. I know I won't see this until April. I want TSU to name a coach ASAP, and I think we get that. I think we get that this week. If not this week on the podcast, then maybe we get it this week over the weekend. But I don't think we go into 2024 without TSU having a head coach. And then lastly, I would like to see an HBCU upset in the NCAA tournament. I know I'm reaching for the stars with the first and the last one, but I'll reach for the stars. I don't care. I'll do it. So I appreciate you spending this Christmas day with me. I tried to keep it a little bit shorter than we normally do, but I'll be back on Wednesday. No episode on Tuesday. I'm going to enjoy my Christmas and then have, that Tuesday episode. I'm just going to be off, but I'll be back with you on Wednesday to look at Texas Southern and why I believe we'll have why I believe we'll have a head coach announcement before the new year. But until then, enjoy your Christmas. Enjoy your holidays. Take care. Stay blessed. Peace. Now let's go get these gifts.